We were obsessed with covering everything about the Super Bowl. We went to the Orange Bowl at 4:30 a.m. on game day. And we got pretty much what you'd expect at 4:30 a.m. Darkness and silence. You can understand why we never used any of this. It was 2 hours before anyone else showed up.
How many programs do you have today?
We didn't know it at the time, but one of the trucks carrying the programs to the stadium had flipped over, and thousands of these souvenir programs wound up in a Florida swamp. That's why today, the program from this game is one of the most valuable Super Bowl collectibles. As that long morning wore on, we were getting desperate for things to shoot. We even spent an hour at the will call window. They should have called it the don't bother window.
Jack here, or Joyce McGowan?
Yeah, what can I do for you?
I just wondered if you had it. He told me to come back this week.
No, we don't have a ticket. Yes, sir.
There's 2 tickets left here for Mr. Chernin, C-H-E-R-N-I-N, by Craig Morton.
No, sir, they haven't come in yet. AC? Uh-huh. He hasn't brought it in yet, sir. No, sir, not here yet. Don't have anything for Thomas. Not yet.
Or Charlie Solomon?
No, sir.
Eva Forgia?
No, sir.
Well, can I have your name, please? Because there's going to have to be something done about this.
Ella May.
I'm sorry?
Ella May.
Ella May? Mm-hmm. Now, what's your last name?
Weatherwax.
I work
Take a blimp ride.
Huh?
Take a blimp ride.
Yeah.
Do you have tickets for Lewin, L-E-W-I-N?
When we looked through the outs 30 years later, we found someone we knew.
Gene was going to leave me 2 credentials.
That's Denny Lewin, then a gopher for ABC Sports, and he's trying to bum a couple of sideline passes from our crew. Today, Denny's the NFL's Senior Vice President of Broadcasting. And hey, Joe Brown, you'll notice we didn't give him any passes, all right? By 9 a.m., we were exhausted, and we still had 4 hours to game time. In our search for any signs of life, we ran across George Toma painting the field. George had prepared the field for every Super Bowl. This was the first one with artificial turf. It was quite a come down for the man we called the sod god.
Well, we had the sod god, marquee of grass, you know what I mean? Sports Illustrated calls me the nitty-gritty dirt man. Being 71 years old, being 72, I'm born on Groundhog Day, so I'm a groundhog, you know what I mean? But I remember that was called, I believe, polyturf at that time. It was something new, and we had to do the same thing of decorating and painting it up. In those years, we used a Super Bowl trophy on the 50-yard line, and what I most remember for that, you know, they kept on saying, hey, they wanted silvery. I said, you can't, you have to be gray. No, we go ahead and put silver on it, you know, metallic silver. What we did, we had a heck of a time trying to wash it off, and that's my job, whether it's artificial or natural. I have to do the job plus and then some.
George didn't have much of a budget. He had to scrounge up whatever he could find, like these miniature football markers for the end zone. He got those from the team he worked for during the season, the Kansas City Chiefs. For me, it was odd seeing football's signature event played on fake grass. Iron Mike Ditka playing on plastic.
That linebacker, Hendricks, is way outside me all the time. Go ahead, let's go!
Ditka and Dan Reeves, number 30, were part of Tom Landry's Dallas Brain Trust that day. 2 outstanding players who went on to become Super Bowl head coaches. The Baltimore think tank included Johnny Unitas and a former school teacher named George Young. He's wearing a blue jacket there. George went from the Colts line coach to general manager of the Super Bowl champion New York Giants. Another contributor on the Baltimore sideline that day was Sam Havrelak, number 17, who went from Colt running back to doctor of dentistry.
Miami's grass was probably the worst, other than the Astrodome, because the traction was so poor. It was so hot there all the time that the blades of grass actually kind of bent over from melting, so that you couldn't get much traction, and it was very slippery.
Everybody was sliding around on that nasty polyturf. Even John Unitas looked out of step. I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was because he had long hair instead of his traditional buzz cut. Or was it something even more unthinkable?
Thinking back, you see Unitas on that phony grass field, which is weird to think of anyway. What else about Johnny Unitas that day was different?
He was wearing low cuts. was the only time in his career he wore low cuts.
What's the story behind that?
I don't think there was a company that made high-top AstroTurf shoes. I don't think they had any. So he wore low cuts.
But somebody had to say, John, those are shoes.
Oh, yeah, we gave him a raft of baloney about it, you know.
What would you say?
Well, you know, we'd say the last time we saw a pair of legs like that, there was a message attached to them, you know, like a carrier pigeon, you know. I said, he had terrible-looking legs. Still does. You know, we always used to say that he looked like a crab running sideways, you know, when he set up.
Maybe it was the low cuts. Whatever, Unitas fumbled and threw 2 interceptions in less than a quarter of play. He was finally knocked out of the game with broken ribs. Super Bowl V was a painful chapter in a Hall of Fame career. Super Bowl V, we now had 15 cameras, including this 1,000-millimeter lens shot by a Super Bowl rookie. That's Phil Tuckett, who's still with us as producer of the Lost Treasures series.
Tripod, Stanley, you got that nailed down?
We also tried a new angle.
Okay, let's get this thing leveled off now. Just cart up and down the sidelines ought to really work out good today.
Put that Geo
Get some film action like they've never seen.
You gonna put chains on there, Stanley?
Yes, sir.
I understand you're gonna be in a halftime parade, Stanley, as one of the floats.
The idea was to mount a fixed camera on a movable dolly, just like television. The problem was, we weren't high enough to get a good angle of John Mackey's famous tip touchdown reception, or to clear the heads of the players on the Baltimore bench. We didn't get one usable shot from this camera, and we never tried it again. That season, Don McCafferty had replaced Don Shula as the Colts head coach, and the change was dramatic. They called Don Easy Rider, and he let third-string quarterback George Myra, injured running back Tom Matty, and George Young call most of the plays.
We're not having enough time to throw the ball. They got a safety blitz. All he's going to do is put a bow out mover and R and L. Where's Orr? Jimmy!
At one point, they even asked veteran wide receiver Jimmy Orr for his advice.
I agree with you after I watched him on the takeoff.
This never would have happened if Don Shula was running things.
No, I want you to go in there and just act like you're going to throw. Dog, low. And as soon as you see him pump to the right side, you haul ass. When Earl turns to look at you, he's going to come up and you can run right by him. I guarantee you. As soon as Earl pumps, let it go. All right? You ought to get 6 out of it.
The play Matty, Myra, Young, and Orr cooked up was a flea flicker that Sam Haverlack improvised into a near touchdown. It was a play that typified a Keystone Cops kind of an afternoon. Guys slipping, falling, stumbling, fumbling. The press actually called this the Blunder Bowl.
So I was running back. I took the handoff, ran to the right, went out about 7-8 yards, turned around. Jethro Pugh was standing right there, so he was blocking my line of sight back to the quarterback, Earl Morrill. Looked downfield and saw Eddie Hinton, who was in a place where he shouldn't have been. And Eddie, of course, caught the ball, was running toward the end zone, and had the ball dislodged on about the 1 or 2 yard line.
There were 4 lost fumbles and 6 interceptions. Finally, mercifully, it ended with Jim O'Brien's last-second field goal. The Baltimore bench went wild, but in the outtakes, we discovered a poignant postscript. The winning coach, Don McCafferty, left the field almost unnoticed, except by our cameraman, Gene Mason. The Easy Rider never made it back to the big game, and to this day, he's the answer to a trivia question. Who was the winning head coach in Super Bowl V?